Good afternoon. Welcome to this edition of Faith, Family, and Political Affairs. I wanted to come to you to discuss my series that is running right now on my YouTube channel and on my social media sites, which include Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. I am right now running a series that I have named Why Black Women Tend to Shout. And I hope you've been paying attention to it. I decided to do it because Black women seem to be under attack on a number of levels these days, from some expected places like the White House and those who occupy it right now. And then from some unexpected places, I must say, I have been surprised by this move from Stephen A. Smith, who has long been one of my favorite sports analysts. And but of late, seems to be clashing with some very prominent Black women, some of my favorites. And I just wanted to just touch upon that a little bit. But on my YouTube channel, the series is called Why Black Women Tend to Shout. And I must say, I'm glad to do it because, years ago, Tyler Perry did this movie that was a big hit with Black women called Diary of a Mad Black Woman. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the movie, um, the main character is a Black woman whose husband, has decided to suddenly leave her for a younger woman. And so the story sort of chronicles how she rebuilds her life. So, but in keeping with this myth that is out there about Black women, that you know, when we do talk loud or when we do appear to be upset about a thing, it is very often just attributed to this mythical, angry person. And when we all know that, like for any other person, if you feel maligned, if you feel misunderstood, if you feel misused or abused, then you have a right to defend yourself, right? And and so many times what may be analyzed in this very, unfair way is passion. I call it passion with which you would respond to defend yourself if you feel that you've been misunderstood, uh, maligned in some way, or misused. And so my series sort of touches upon that. The first installment was Taraji P. Henson's portrayal of Katherine Johnson, who was one of many Black female mathematicians who helped in the very first space launch. And it's chronicled in a movie called Hidden Figures. And she has this powerful scene that, went viral when the movie was out. Um, where she has to defend her absence from the meeting room where everybody else is working because she has to travel miles and miles. She has to run back and forth to use the bathroom because there's no bathroom for African American women. So I thought that was apropos because she's clearly misunderstood. She's clearly not doing anything wrong, and she's clearly very hurt by the assumption that she's just trying to avoid doing her job. So I just advise you to, and you can see that a clip from that movie at any time on YouTube. Again, the movie's Hidden Figures. So you can see that at any time, but I'm running it on my page for the next several days. The series also was intended to lead into Black History Month because, right after February is Black History Month, of course, and right after that is Women's History Month. But that doesn't always feel to me that it encompasses Black female history. And so I just wanted to sort of give us a little bit of a boost going in. And of course, now that it's February, welcome to Black History Month. So, okay. Um, so the other thing that I just wanted to say is that, sometimes these attacks can come from expected places, like the White House. All of us know by now that Donald Trump seems to not be a fan of certainly not of prominent Black women. He has come out very, in a very terrible way against Jasmine Crockett very often. Nothing nice to say about her. Calls very many prominent Black women low IQ. Speaks very disparagingly of the former Vice President Kamala Harris. He still hasn't gotten over the fact that she was in the White House. She has been in the White House, and that she had the nerve to run against him last election. And like with all of his wins, he seems to not be able to move forward. Even when he wins, he holds on to grudges. But anyway, yeah, he's had some terrible things to say about Kamala Harris, of course, and Lisa Cook of the Federal Reserve. He tried to take her job and, went out to California to have a confrontation with Karen Bass in LA with taking all the troops out there. She was one of the first cities that he went to. Of course, Muriel Bowser sort of, kowtowed and went along. I won't say kowtowed, I shouldn't say that, but she sort of made it easy, a little bit easier for them when they went into DC. But so sometimes the attack on Black women seems to come from expected places like that, and you're not surprised by it. And sometimes you don't even feel the need to respond to it because it's not founded or grounded in anything real. It's usually very personal for whomever it comes from, like the newscaster Megyn Kelly, who always seems to have something disparaging to say about Black women. She took a real strong hit at Joy Ann Reid when Joy Ann Reid lost her job at MSNBC. And she has some terrible things to say about Joanne Reed. But who is now, on social media sites with her own channel. She has become an independent journalist and launched her own very successful channel, I might say. Um, so Megyn Kelly and Trump, these are the expected places that these attacks come from on Black women, these disparaging words. But I must say, of late, Stephen A. Smith has emerged as an unexpected, place from which these attacks on Black women have come. And I was very hesitant to speak on it because for many, many years, I've adored Stephen A. Smith. I have followed his career and I just like his outspokenness. But I also like that he always brought his numbers, his receipts. He always did his homework. I like that about Stephen A. And he was loud and vocal, but he knew what he was talking about. He was an expert in that field. And so I very often wanted to know his political views, but I must say I've been surprised at how he's singled out Black women, prominent Black women, to um to have negative analysis of their performances, of their abilities. He's done that with Jasmine Crockett. He took issue at her, she's very clear about not agreeing with Donald Trump's tactics and with his moves against social programs that help regular working class people. She's been very clear about that. And Stephen A. seemed to think that she was being unfairly disparaging about Trump, and he felt the need to defend Donald Trump against Jasmine Crockett, which is a puzzle to those of us who have followed his career and have supported him throughout the years. And then he, of late, came after Joanne Reed, just much like Megyn Kelly did, to talk about how bad her ratings were at the time that she was let go from MSNBC. He's had some disparaging things to say about Kamala Harris. He felt that she didn't run her campaign well enough, that pretty much everything that didn't go right was her fault with that. Even though, of course, she Joe Biden dropped out of the race, the presidential race, maybe what, 2 months before, and she didn't have a lot of time to prepare her own run for the presidency. And I for one, I thought she did an incredible job. Of course, she did not prevail, and Stephen A. seems to think that's some sort of proof that she was not prepared. Um, some of us who supported her would attribute that to a lack of enough time, a lack of sufficient time to prepare her own campaign and to introduce her own self to the people of the country, not being the second person to anyone else, but being the lead on the ticket. And but Stephen A. seemed not to have much grace to extend toward her. So, as I said, this is what led me to do the series, Why Black Women Tend to Shout. Now, these women that I've just mentioned, they don't tend to do a lot of shouting. Now, Jasmine Crockett, if she needs to say it loudly, she will say it loud, whatever she needs to say. But it is not because she's misguided. It is definitely not because she's mad. It is because she is passionate about and very clear about what she's trying to accomplish out as a representative for Texas, and then on the national scale, on the national stage as well, as these other women are as well. And as I said, Tyler Perry did the movie Diary of a Mad Black Woman. And he even was playing on that whole theme of black women being somehow angrier than most. And of course, we supported that film. And I say we now, I'm talking about black women. We supported that movie, loved it. But that's because we're clear, we know that's a myth. And the woman in the movie was, you may feel that she was very justified in her actions. Some you may or may not feel that way, but it's a myth, and that it's a myth and a movie. But I want to invite you to, tune into the series. It runs through the 6th of February, and I'm going to try to introduce you to some females, black women who are passionate about what they're doing, and who, when they do shout, they have a very legitimate reason for the shouting. And so I hope that you'll tune in on my YouTube channel, and also like and subscribe on that, because I'm trying to build my membership and on that on that channel. And also check out my other social media sites. Okay, so moving on from that, I um I just wanted to touch a little bit. I stumbled across something earlier today. Oprah Winfrey did this um video about how she has these pictures in her home of her mentors, among them Quincy Jones, who passed away recently. One of my favorite, all-time favorites, Tina Turner. who passed away a couple of years ago. Um, Sidney Poitier, who's passed on, and of course her spiritual mother, I would say Maya Angelou. She recalls a time, when Maya Angelou read to her and gave her that piece of advice that everyone has seemed to have adopted about when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Um, and of course, she shows a picture with her and Nelson Mandela, and she talks about having, um, been blessed to spend about a couple of months with him, some extended time with him. And I thought it was particularly moving, this video. And look it up. I seem to be a promoter of YouTube. They don't pay me to do it. I just find a lot of very interesting news, history, reliable. It's a reliable source. Um, when you're not when I'm not checking in on the main news channels the way I used to. But yeah, if you go to YouTube, you can find Oprah's tribute to these, as she calls them, her mentors in life. And I thought it was absolutely moving. It's not very long, but she said it just reminded her to be grateful for those people who have shaped her life. And it has made her, feel that a stronger sense even of passing that on, to a new generation. And I thought that was especially moving because all of us have people in our lives who have helped us, as we used to say, helped us to get over. That song Mahalia Jackson used to sing. Um, how I got over. So there are a lot of us who have people in our lives. And I thought that this would be a good time to suggest that you remember those people in your life who you were so grateful for, who you know that without them, you would not have become the person that you are. Um, Dorothy Norwood, old school gospel singer from years ago, used to have this song. She sang that old rickety bridge. And go listen to that on YouTube sometime. An old rickety bridge. I might be an old rickety bridge, the song says, but I got you over. Yes, I did. And so I think that this is a time, this is a good time because there's a lot of upheaval right now in the country. Um, a lot of uncertainty. And those things that you have always counted on to be there in your life, and maybe even those people, sometimes seem to be moving away, and things are not as certain as they once were. Our way of life is even being challenged right now. And so, wouldn't this be a good time to, if those people are still with you, call them up, say thank you. I appreciate you. I remember that time you did this or that, to help me. And you may even be that person in somebody's life. So you may get that call. But I think this, especially for African American culture, because I think we're under such fierce attack right now. Social programs, even our church situations. And so if you have a moment, pick up the phone, call someone who has been instrumental or supportive in your life, and just remember them. Just say thank you. Um, and you'd be surprised probably how they'd be surprised, but how they would appreciate it so much. So that leads me in as I talk about the challenges and the uncertainty. The one thing that gives me great comfort is the King Center. I have to say that because even in the midst of all this turmoil, they are still Reverend Bernice King and Martin King III. They continue to promote nonviolence. In the face of all these ICE raids And the very vicious way that they are snatching people up off the street and keeping people in these detention centers, even in the face of all of that, the Kings still promote nonviolence. And I think that that's a blessing for all of us because it is very easy to cross that line. We have watched in Minnesota two people now be killed on the street by these federal immigration and customs enforcement or ICE agents. I'm going to say their names, the two people who were killed. Renee Nicole Good, 37-year-old mother of three children and a wife, um, killed in a confrontation with ICE agents. She was actually in her car, um, trying to drive off when one of, or several of them stormed around her car, but one of them actually shot into her car and killed her. So we say her name. And then Alex Pretty, um, a nurse at the Veterans Hospital there in Minnesota, was killed. Actually, he was coming to the defense of a woman who had been pushed to the ground, and he was trying to help her pushed to the ground by the ICE agents. And he was trying to help her out, and they ended up storming around him and killing him. He was shot several times. And the investigations, federal investigations into both of these are still in question. We don't even know if they're going to investigate these deaths. However, the state attorney general, Keith Ellison, has said that Minnesota intends to investigate. Although they are not being helped, they are being hindered by the federal government, by which is not sharing, evidence and stuff with the state authorities at this moment. And so again, and the streets of Minnesota are filled with protesters almost every day. I liken it to the Deep South, down in the 60s and the 50s. What we're witnessing, it's it's unbelievable. Um, you know, the way they tear gas the people, they spray them with this gas. It is absolutely it's just hard to believe that it's happening in 2026. These images, one of the things that the civil rights people always recall is that the images of the dogs attacking the people, the police would sick the dogs on the who were protesting for rights, to sit-ins and stuff. And it was those images that came across the TV. Of course, the TV was it was a phenomenon back then. A lot of homes didn't even have TVs yet. And so to see these images televised changed the course, of the movement because it moved people's hearts. But look now, it's 2026, and we're seeing these images, but it's also moving people's hearts. Because whether you support this administration or not, I don't think you intended to see people being killed in the streets this way. Okay, so I go back to the King Center and nonviolence. And it's absolutely amazing to me that they continue with all of their hearts to promote nonviolence and to offer this as a remedy or at least one solution to to what's happening in the country right now. Bernice King recently released a video where she's talking about she feels that something, I think she used the word animalistic, has been released in the country now that allows these agents to be inhumane in their treatment of people. And so, I'm not a spokesperson for the King Center or anything, but I think it is amazing. And so I would encourage people to go to their website and check out this. They offer teachings of Kingian nonviolence. And some of the organizations might be interested in how that might play out, in this environment. Because certainly we can't meet violence with violence, because we don't want to see this level of hurt and harm come to people. Because this current president, he doesn't seem to mind sending military style people. Because I don't think these people are military trained. I think these are militias. you know. Um, they behave, they certainly are not law enforcement, okay, people. Even though they're covered, they're called with that broad brush of law enforcement, they don't behave, they wear masks. If you listen to me, I have a problem with these masks. You know I have a problem with that. I think the only people in the history of this country who have worn masks and come around to snatch people up off the street have been the Klan, the KKK. And that's a terrible part of the history of this nation that we don't want to relive. Okay? They were primarily in the South. And they knew that they were marginalized. They knew that they were not, the way that most people felt. So they hid under hoods and masks, so they would not be known during the day. Okay, so they were like cowards, you know. Um, and some people suggest that maybe these ICE agents are cowardly because if you're proud of what you're doing, why are you wearing masks? I addressed that in my last video, so I don't want to get on that here. Um, but anyway, consider consider nonviolence. Um, I myself, I understand when you feel that this is too much. One of the people who I follow online, Hawk Podcast, he had a headline last week. Is it time to arm ourselves? You know, he just was asking the question, is it time to fire back? And I must say that you can kind of understand how some people might consider that. Okay, so I'll leave that there. Um, my next and last thing that I'd like to talk about, um, topic for this video is the First Amendment that protects journalists in their right to uh, cover the news in a fair and free manner without fear of being jailed and prosecuted for simply covering the news events of the day. Now, those of you who know me well know that I was a reporter, newspaper reporter for many years in North Carolina and in Virginia. Um, so I'm speaking a little bit from personal knowledge. Um, you don't always know what news event you're going to be sent to cover when you work for a news outlet. Um, you just know that when you get there, your job is to try to get both sides of whatever is occurring, whatever is going on. Your job is to go there and get both sides of it. At a recent protest in a church in Minnesota, which is the hotbed right now. Again, I liken it to that movie Mississippi Burning that was covering all of the church burnings and stuff in the South. This is like Minnesota burning. It's like Minnesota is on fire. So several of the independent journalists went there, including Don Lemon, whose name you probably know because he used to be an anchor on CNN. But now he's an independent journalist with his own uh, channel and the Don Lemon Show. Um, and he went there to just like journalists do to cover the unrest um, that's occurring in Minnesota. And while he was there, some of the protesters were heading off to a new protest. It happened to be in a church. He goes there to cover it. He covers it. And a few days later, when he is at another news event, getting ready to, well, covering another news event, preparing to cover another news event, the Grammys, he is arrested by federal agents for his coverage of that church protest in Minnesota. Okay. The federal government, I haven't seen their papers that they filed against him, but they're alleging that he was a part of the protest itself and that he somehow helped to instigate that event. I've covered um, protests. I've covered other events that um, were controversial. And when you get there, especially if it's like crazy, like a lot of people, if someone doesn't know you, they may not know that you are. Um, they may not know that you are the journalist. How would they know that? And so, but you continue to you do your job. That is what you do. And so he did his job. And now he is facing federal charges. There's other journalists, another journalist, Georgia Fort, who is of Minnesota. She is also charged for that her coverage of that same event. But be clear that the First Amendment is intended for public to aid in informing the public, and that's what these journalists were involved in. And as we move through this story, of course, Don he's going to have to go to court about this, of course, and face these charges. So be paying attention to that because the media is one institution of a democracy that is first attacked when authoritarians want to take over a democracy. Um, maybe number two, a close second is the media, um, TV stations, and of course all of that, and of course now this administration, the next move is to take over the voting system. They are now going into different states asking for the voting rolls, you know, which Donald Trump had tried one time before. He just was making calls and telling people that he needed a certain number of votes from a certain state. But now his new tactic is to demand the voting rolls. He just had his federal uh, investigators go to Georgia and seize some of their voting history from the voting records from the 2020 election. Believe it or not, he is still trying to revisit that election that he lost. So pay attention to the attack on the voting rights. Um, which was a major accomplishment of the civil rights movement. Pay attention to the continued attack on voting rights, because some people say all of this is about intimidating people. They won't go and vote in November of this year in the midterms because Trump and his party are fearful that they're going to lose. And of course, if they lose the Senate, we expect them to lose the House, but if they lose the Senate also, then he will most likely be impeached. That is what he is fearful of. So we pay attention uh, to what is coming up with those things and what develops in the coming weeks. And of course, once again, and I'll say this and sign off. Many people say that all of it is about distracting us from the release of the rest of the Epstein files. And of course, he figures very prominently in those. And the government just released another batch of those in which, Epstein was the pedophile that Trump was known to be best friends with back in the day. And Trump continues to be represented in these files at different levels. And so that's what is not clear. And people still wonder if he will be indicted down the line for some of what is in these files. So I want to urge you to continue to pay attention. And you know my saying, do what you can, where you can, when you can. You may not be able to get out and march and protest, but you can do what you can. If you're a writer, you can write. If you sing, you can sing. If you draw, you can draw pictures. Do something to document what is happening right now. Um, so that your voice too can be heard. I want to thank you for tuning in, and please remember to go and check out Faith, Family, and Political Affairs, the series, Why Black Women Tend to Shout. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Faith, Family, and Political Affairs.